Just 20 years ago, in order to record a professional song, one had to go to a studio, get studio time, and record in a brand new digital audio workstation called Pro Tools. What was special about Pro Tools is finally you could make music on a computer. Before that, you had to record into a console, which was even more unnecessarily expensive than Pro Tools. Fast forward to 2012, and a company called Universal Audio, made famous by inventions like the 1176 compressor and the 610 preamp, release a truly innovative product, a new line of interfaces called the UA Apollo series, which added a new thing that no one had used before or even thought possible, called a DSP chip. What made these DSP chips so powerful and amazing and sought after was that you could now take digital effects plugins and print them to your mix. You didn't even have to print them to your mix. You could just have them on your headphone mix and send the raw vocals to your computer, or you could print them out. What made this amazing was that on your computers that might not run all these plugins you want to add to your vocals or your guitars or your whatever you're tracking, now you could add all that shit without lagging your computer or crashing your DAW. No longer was it an issue of, oh no, I have too many plugins on this and I can't get the vocal to sound how I want it because all of these plugins are doing something. Now, instead of having that being an issue, you can just do a bunch of the work on your interface and then just add 2 or 3 plugins on your computer to get it the rest of the way there. Now, fast forward once again to 2018, and Universal Audio were kind of sitting in the hot seat, because now for the first time in forever, the computers are good enough to run all the plugins that we need without these DSP chips. So now Universal Audio is kind of in a situation where the only reason people are buying their interfaces is because of the quality. But now, once again, for the first time in forever, there's higher quality interfaces that you could buy without the DSP chips for the same price. At the same time, we were starting to see the rise up of at-home recording and people actually looking for higher quality in their at-home recordings. And once again, for the first time in forever, companies were starting to come out with better and better products that forced the companies with more expensive products, like Universal Audio, for instance, now they had to force their prices down or come out with another line of interfaces or something, because now their current product lines aren't gonna work long term. They're just not. So, to remedy this, UA released the Volt series of interfaces, and oh my god, bro, for the price, just listen to my voice. Obviously, you're the judge of whether you like this sound or not, but oh my god, it sounds like I have analog gear on my voice right now. Specifically, I'm using the Volt 276, which also, along with the vintage mode, has a 76 style compressor emulation built into it, which are both analog circuits, and together this is what they sound like. Shortly after Universal Audio came out with this, SSL did release their own series of interfaces, which sound very good and also have an analog circuit built in. The reason why I decided to buy the UA interface was because this gives you a little bit more of a darker sound, which is really, it complements brighter microphones, whereas the SSL gives you a much brighter sound, which far better complements darker microphones. This is a sample of the Rode NT1A going into input 1 of the Volt 276 without vintage mode or the compressor engaged, and this is what it sounds like. This is a sample of me speaking into the Rode NT1A, going directly into input 1 of my Volt 276 and recording with vintage mode engaged, and this is what it sounds like. This is a vocal recording of me speaking into the Volt 276 through the Rode NT1A with both vintage mode and the compressor turned on. The compressor is set to the vocal mode, and this is how that's sounding like. This is yet another clip of me speaking into the Rode NT1A, going directly into input 1 of the Volt 276. I have both the compressor and vintage mode engaged, and the compressor is set to the guitar setting, and this is how that's sounding like. Finally, this is a clip of me speaking into the Rode NT1A, going directly into input 1 of the Volt 276 and recording with both vintage mode and the compressor engaged. The compressor is set to fast mode, and this is how that is sounding like. Now, I would like to get into a couple of pros and cons about this interface. There are some things that I really like about this and some things that I really dislike about this, and we'll get into those right now. The first pro is what you get for the price. I mean, for $450 for the most expensive interface in this lineup, you get the vintage compressor and the vintage preamp built in, and it comes with the cords, which is a game changer for universal audio. Usually they don't come with the cords on their more expensive units. The ones that are up there in the $1,000 range, those don't come with cords. So the fact that these do is pretty amazing, actually. The second pro is also cord related, but I feel like it deserves its own mention, which is for a bus powered interface, the fact that this has a 5-volt DC power charging port is amazing. The fact that the cord comes in the box with the interface is game changing, because since this is class compliant, which is the third pro about this actually, since these interfaces are class compliant for all Apple devices, I just need to connect the DC charger to a USB port of some form with power, plug it into the interface, and boom, I'm able to record right here on my phone. No issues. I don't need to install drivers. I don't need a MacBook to do it. That's amazing. The fourth upside is the build of this. Not only just the build, but I'm going to throw the aesthetic in the same category, because this is such a quality build. Something that I feel like on even the Focusrite interfaces, you don't really get that super quality build to it. You don't hold it and feel super confident that it's not just gonna break. And with the universal audio interface, I definitely got that feeling. Along with that, the aesthetic with the knobs on the top and the buttons, and then the wood panels on either side that sort of give it that vintage feel, along with the power switch and the old school MIDI jacks on here, which is just crazy. The old school MIDI jacks just add to the vintage feel, which brings me to point 5, the vintage MIDI jacks. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this could be either a pro or a con depending on how you look at it, Because on one hand, it's cool that the interface has them, but on the other, not too many MIDI controllers or MIDI keyboards still use those MIDI jacks. I mean, a majority of them have USB, and they're just taking up real estate on the interface that I feel like could have been dedicated to ADAT ports. So I'm going to give this one to both the pro category and the con category, because I feel like it adds to aesthetic more than it is actually useful to have MIDI in and outs on the back. Now for cons, when you purchase this interface, under specs it says that it works with Windows 10. What it doesn't say is that if your computer isn't good enough to run the UA Connect application, you're shit out of luck. Luckily, I have an iPhone and I'm able to run it on a class-compliant device, but I can't record in Reaper at all. The second con is that the phantom power button is global to all the inputs. And what that means is once you click phantom power, you can't use a dynamic microphone on any of the inputs. You have to have 4 condensers hooked up. Now, that goes the other way too. If you connect a dynamic microphone or a tube microphone, you cannot connect any condenser microphones because it won't be powered, and if you turn on that phantom power button, you have a chance of frying your microphone. So I would definitely like to see on a future update perhaps different phantom power switches for each individual channel. I would really like to see that happen. The last con about this interface is the lack of expansion options, and I know that this is very nitpicky at this point, but I feel like the Volt and interfaces like it are going to be the future of at-home recording. Having said that, it's very hard to track drums with only 4 inputs. So if someone's tracking drums at home, they're going to gravitate towards something like the SSL 18 or even the SSL 12 or the SSL 2 for that matter, because I'm pretty sure all 3 have ADAT expansion, which none of the Volts have. So I feel like they need a Volt 876 and a Volt 8 to add to their interface lineups, along with, in my personal opinion, a Volt X line where they take all of their preamps from the Apollo X series and put it on the Volt interfaces, along with maybe a DSP chip and some more controls for the compression perhaps. And I feel like that could be very cool. The other idea that I had was maybe put an LA2A compressor on the Volt X series as well, just to, you know, add that much more, and then maybe like some different characters for the preamps, and then you can make the bigger versions rack-mounted units. But I was just thinking, like, I feel like that could be a really cool addition to the UA lineup, considering that that's something that SSL is absolutely capitalizing on, even on their more expensive rack-mounted units. In conclusion, if you're recording on a more expensive PC with really good specs, or if you're recording on an M1 Mac or later, I would absolutely recommend getting one of these Volt 276s or any interface in the Volt lineup for that matter. And I'd go a step further in saying that I would recommend one of the Volt interfaces over something like one of the Apollo interfaces, because simply put, with the Volt, you're just getting more bang for your buck. Are the Apollo interfaces objectively better? Yes. As far as quality, you're getting better preamps, A to D conversion, all of that with an Apollo interface. But at the same time, with the Volt, you're getting 90% there at like half the price of one of the one input units from Universal Audio. So just don't get an Apollo period unless you're really making money from mixing and mastering. It's just unnecessary. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It'll help push the channel to more people. Also, if you'd really like to help support me, go over to Instagram and Twitter at YesSirDiablo and follow my profiles there too. It's very helpful. Finally, if you really want to help support me, you can go check out my music through the links I will leave in the description below. Having said all of that, thank you for sticking around to the end if you have, and if you haven't, well, you're not seeing this anyway, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.